Hello and welcome into the Addison to 35th podcast. I'm your host for this Cubs episode, Ryan Herrera, and I'm recording today, Friday, August 15th. You might be listening to this Saturday, August 15th, or August 16th, but I'm recording Friday, August 15th after the Cubs drop the series opener to the Pirates 3-2. The Cubs are now 68 and 35. Yeah, 68 and 53. Sorry, 68 and 53 on the season, which on the surface sounds like a good record at this point with plenty of games left to get that record even higher. But as we know, the Cubs have not been in a good place here, results wise, win loss record wise, for a while now. And just to kind of reset things as far as playoff races go, with again, this is Friday, this is right after the game. So with plenty of teams still left to play after the Cubs 120 game, a lot of teams have night games. So with plenty of teams left to play, the Cubs are now 8.5 games back of the Brewers in the National League Central, and they are now only tied for the top NL wild card spot. I believe it's the Dodgers that they're tied with now, who would still have to play this season. So they might end up by the end of the night in that second wild card spot. And so that's where they're at in that scenario. And they are only 4.5 games ahead of the Reds now, the Cincinnati Reds, who are the first team out of the wild card. So not a lot of breathing room with teams that are still in the hunt for the wild card spot. It's been a bad few weeks of baseball. Today was another bad game for the just disappointing game, disappointing outcome, of course, for the Cubs against a bad Pirates team. A series, the drop the series in Toronto, drop the series in St. Louis. Then you get the Pirates at home, who just got swept pretty handedly by the Brewers during the week. And if you're feeling good about the Pirates coming into town as the Cubs, maybe to face the Cubs, maybe like a get right series. And it can still be that they can still win the series, but no sweep available after dropping this one. Cubs just didn't really get anything going offensively against the Pirates pitching. They got 5 innings, 1 run from Colin Ray, who's done a standout job filling in basically the entire season at this point in the rotation when you didn't know if how much he was going to be needed to make starts. Has basically been doing that for the majority of the year and has done a pretty good job. Did another good job today. Bullpen gives up a couple runs. I want to say that was Brazier in the 6th, and then Palencia go ahead and ultimately game-winning home run Jack Sawinski in the top of the 9th. And then the bottom of the 9th, I think that kind of just sums up what's been going on with the Cubs at this point. PCA had a 3-for-3 day today, including driving in the first run. I believe that was the 4th inning, but then leads off the 9th inning with a single, tries to steal second base. I think that was on the first pitch and stole it. Like he beat the throw pretty easily, but he overslides second, can't get back to the bag, gets tagged out. And instead of nobody out with a man on second in a 1-run game, the Cubs drop, they end up having nobody on with 1 out and couldn't get anything else going that inning, and then dropped the series opener to the Pirates. I got to mention the stat that I saw marquee during the game. The Cubs have not won a game in which they've trailed at any point since July 2nd. You're talking about 6 weeks or so of baseball with no comeback wins, regardless of how big the lead is or the deficit is. No comeback wins. Have not won a game in which they trailed at any point since July 2nd. That's just that can't happen. That can't happen when you're trying to be a postseason team, postseason contender, and trying to make this playoff push over the last month and a half of the season. Leads, you have to find a way. If you go down in a game, you have to find ways to put runs on the board and come back. And they haven't done that for 6 weeks, and that kind of helps explain the funk the Cubs have been in for a while now. And that PCA oversliding second on a steal he easily had. That kind of is that when it rains, it pours thing for the Cubs. It just feels like everything is going wrong for the Cubs right now, and that was the latest example. So, 68 and 53 on the year, still in playoff position, but they got to get things turned around soon because that can be gone sooner or quicker than you think. A lead like that, 4.5 games right now, that can be gone soon. So, got to get it turned around. The biggest thing is and this is since the All-Star. I'm gonna move into the next segment here. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the first thing on the rundown is the offense in a post All-Star break funk. You can pick whatever arbitrary date to start things or whatever. I went with the All-Star break. It's just easier to go with that. So I'm going to rattle off some stats for you. This is post All-Star break entering Friday. The rotation has actually been doing a hell of a job. A 3.119 ERA, which is second in baseball, and then you add in Colin Ray's 5 innings, 1 earned run. So it improves that even more. So that's second in baseball entering Friday. The bullpen has obviously not been as good. 4.98 ERA. I didn't write down where that ranks in baseball, but it's lower on the list. So the bullpen hasn't been as good themselves lately, and that's not even including Ryan Brazier and Daniel Palencia combining for the 2 earned runs on Friday. Kittredge and Keller both had scoreless innings, so that helps it, but a couple runs from the bullpen there at the end of that game, so I would think that might raise the ERA slightly, but hasn't been good for the bullpen post All-Star break. But the offense has been the main thing that we're seeing. The main cause for concern up and down the lineup. It hasn't been good, and it's a lot of it is the big hitters, and I'll get to like individual numbers here soon, but like the big hitters just don't seem to be driving the offense the way they did for like the first 2.5, even 3 months of the season. This is where the Cubs are at. Again, post All-Star break stats entering Friday. So between the end of the All-Star break and Thursday, the Cubs have a 95 WRC plus, which is 22nd in baseball, a 689 OPS, which is 24th is among all the 30 lineups. 689 OPS, which is 24th, 235 batting average, 24th. They've scored 93 runs, which was 28th. And then even if you add in the 2 more today, I don't think they pass up anybody with potential to fall to 29th by the end of the night. They've only combined for the position player group a 2.7 FWAR, which is 18th in baseball, when they were way up at the top of the list for like the entire season. They're only 27th in hits with 187 going into today, plus the 6th on Friday. Some of their StatCast stats, and this kind of helps explain some things. They're actually 7th in barrel rate, so you're getting the barrel on the ball. 7th in baseball, which is good, but they're down at 27th in hard hit rate since the All-Star break, 37.1%, and they're tied for 28th in average exit velocity at 88.1 miles per hour. So getting the barrel on the ball is great, but if you're not hitting it super hard, you're not putting it in the air, like, or I guess you'd have to get in the air, but getting the barrel on the ball is great. But if you're not just consistently hitting the ball hard, not consistently getting those hard hits, it's going to hurt you overall as an offense. They're only hitting it. They're hitting it on the ground at a 40.3% clip, which is down in like I guess starting from like high ground ball rate, starting from highest to lowest. They're 21st in baseball, so it's actually a pretty solid as far as you're getting it in the air more, right? 40.3%, 21st team in baseball. That means they're one of the 10 teams that are getting the ball in the air more, which is usually good. So because they're actually 12th in line drive percentage and 13th in fast fly ball percentage, but they're also only 7th in They're the 7th highest soft contact rate according to Fangraphs. So just a lot of soft contact from this offense going since the All-Star break going into today. They're not chasing as much as maybe it would seem on like watching the games, and maybe you feel like they're chasing it a little bit more. They're actually still 10th when it comes to out of zone swing percentage, as far as like 10th lowest out of zone swing percentage. They're 10th in contact rate, actually, which is good. They're not necessarily striking out a lot, and that kind of goes hand in hand with their 11th and the 11th lowest strikeout rate since the All-Star break, which is still good. They're 16th in walk rate. They've been higher than that for the majority of the season, so that's probably gone down a little bit. But they are 9th in swinging strike rate according to Fangraphs, the 9th highest swinging strike rate. So, or 9th lowest. I'm getting too many numbers in my head right now, but just I think one thing you can look at is since the All-Star break, they have the fifth or sixth low. They're 25th in BABIP at 271, which is so that means one of the fifth or sixth low, whatever that is, the fifth or sixth lowest BABIP among all 30 teams. And batting average on balls in play, like that's partially luck based, and maybe that explains just some unfortunate bounces and balls that usually would, or maybe earlier would land in the grass or get past a fielder, not happening as often maybe. But again, it kind of goes to all this stuff is connected where they're not hitting the ball as hard. So maybe if they're even hitting a lot of fly balls, they're not hitting them hard enough to get out of the ballpark, and then they land at the warning track or stuff like that. Like it all kind of mixes together to an offense that's just overall not been great since the All Star break. Again, that 95 WRC plus, 22nd in baseball, 689 OPS, 24th in baseball, 28th in runs scored since the All Star break, including the two today. Just hasn't been good. And one of the main things has been struggles with runners in scoring position um, since the All Star break. Again, going into today, Friday, they had 41 hits, tied for 25th. They'd scored 62 runs when runners in scoring position, which was tied for 27th. Had a 73 WRC plus, which is 27th, a 605 OPS, which is 27th, and a 211 batting average, which is 26th. Their strikeout rate went up in those situations at 22.7%, which with runners in scoring position, which was seventh highest. And they actually haven't had or given themselves a ton of opportunities with runners in scoring position anyway. They've only had 229 plate appearances with runners in scoring position, which is 16th in that stretch, and 194 at bats with runners in scoring position, which is 21st during that stretch. Um, so even Friday, they scored 2 runs, got 6 hits, walked twice, and struck out 6 times. They actually went 2 for 8 with runners in scoring position. One was the PCA RBI that I mentioned to drive in Suzuki. Again, I think that was in the 4th inning. The other hit with runners in scoring position was Dansby's bunt single to load the bases with nobody out, right? Like um, it was a bunt single, so it didn't even score. It didn't even bring in a run. It didn't result in a run scoring there, but it loaded the bases and gave the Cubs an opportunity. They just didn't take advantage of it. But that was their second hit with runners in scoring position. Had Dansby gotten out, they'd be 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position today. So another tough showing with runners in scoring position. I think they left 5 or 6 guys on base, but it's kind of been the story of the offense for a few weeks now, and I mean, it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain why so many of their biggest hitters are the ones that are struggling at all the same time. Like, so you look at the Cubs regulars during this stretch, post All Star break through Thursday. Matt Shaw leading the way with a 212 WRC plus, and we'll talk about him in a minute. Nico Horner posted a 115 WRC plus in that stretch. Hap was at a 111 WRC plus. I included Justin Turner as 113 because it's a positive, but he's also a bench guy at that point, so not a regular. But then you got your guys below league average. League average WRC plus is 100. Carson Kelly is at a 91. Kyle Tucker's at an 87. Seiya Suzuki's at 81. Reese McGuire's at 80. Dansby Swanson at 76. Pete Armstrong at 73. And Michael Busch at 69. So you look at some of the names on that list: Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, Pete Armstrong, Michael Busch. Those 4 guys were like the guys leading the way for the offense the first half of the season, going into the All-Star break, or if you want to say like going into July or whatever. Like those were the 4 guys, the driving force behind an offense that for a few months looked like one of the best offenses in baseball. Since then, all those guys are at least 13% below league average, right? Kyle Tucker at 87 WRC plus would be the closest to league average. Everyone else of those 4, the other 3 of those guys are below it. So, and then Dansby Swanson's struggling. Both the catcher situation, the catcher as far as offense goes, like that was for the most part really good in the first half. But Carson Kelly and Reese McGuire have not combined to do very well offensively in the second half of the season. So it's been everybody. It's really been up and down the lineup. You have some guys, again, I mentioned Shaw and Nico and Hap. Shaw doing really well, but Nico and Hap also solidly above league average. But um, those aren't the guys that are steering the ship or shouldn't be steering the ship. They should be the guys that are supplementing the guys that are steering the ship. And those guys, Tucker, Saya, PCA, Bush, have not been doing it for the last few weeks now. And it's basically about a month now. And it's like I keep kind of going back to everyone wants answers. The fans want to know how to fix the offense. How are you going to fix the offense? We as reporters will ask, like, what's going on? How do you fix this thing? It's really hard to provide an easy answer when when it's so puzzling in this way. So I don't know what the Cubs can do other than, I mean, maybe PC, but the steal notwithstanding, PCA had a good day at the plate today. Maybe that's something that helps him get out of his funk, right? Saya, I know, has, he had the double today. He's feels like he's been hitting the ball harder. Maybe that helps him. Maybe he's making his way out of a funk. Bush has homered a few times over the last few days. I think did he hit two in Toronto and one in St. Louis? Like, it hasn't overall translated. And I know he had a couple of strikeouts today, but maybe that's a sign of him heating up. Kyle Tucker, like, we'll see. He's hit a few balls harder, but there's definitely, you can see the frustration from him, whether that's taking the helmet off and slamming it into the dugout a couple days ago, or even I think it was the second game of the Toronto series, struck out, and you can very clearly hear him swear after striking out. So yeah, I mean, there's not easy answers for how to fix this offense, but just looking at it and looking at the numbers, and you can see it if you're watching the games, right? Like, it's not, you don't need the numbers to see what's going on. The offense is struggling. You can see it on a game to game basis, on a situational basis, runners in scoring position specifically. Um, the offense is struggling, and you can see that even if you don't know the numbers. But when you look at the numbers, especially when you're just looking at it post All Star break, the numbers make sense. Like, the numbers and what you're seeing, they both fit together. And at this point, like, there's no going out and trading for a big bat anymore to kind of wake up the offense. Maybe, Owen Casey came up. Was that yesterday? The last game of the Toronto series, he came up. Maybe he provides a spark, or if Ballesteros gets another shot, maybe he can. But relying on unproven rookies in a playoff push may not be the best course of action. You need your big hitters. You need your guys. But Kyle Tucker specifically, I think he's the main one. Like, you need proven hitters, veteran guys to go out and get it done and turn this thing around. Otherwise, it sucks to say, but the Cubs, if they can't get this thing turned around and turned around soon, they're putting themselves in a poor position to, potentially have another collapse that just completely disappoints the fan base and frustrates the fan base and makes it angry. I still think they're in a good spot, and I'd still say, if sitting here, this past few weeks of rough offensive play notwithstanding, I still think this team has a good shot at making the playoffs. I would still say right now, my prediction would still be the Cubs are in the playoffs at the end of the season, but they haven't looked like the same team that they did for the first 3 months or so of the year. And they need to figure out pretty quick how to get that thing turned around, because not only have they let the NL Central lead slip away, and they have fallen behind in that a lot. And also credit to Milwaukee for doing, just completely sweeping teams, just doing everything they can to win games. I've been up to Milwaukee covering some games more recently, and I can see that they're just firing on all cylinders. So you got to give them credit for just being a really, really good baseball team that can't lose. So the Cubs, that's part of the reason why the Cubs have slipped so far in the division standings. But now the Cubs are also letting their lead in the wild card standings slip away, and they can't let that happen. They have to figure out how to get that turnaround soon. I did mention Matt Shaw, and he's my next segment. He's feels like the only guy who's been doing well, right? He's been doing well for the Cubs offensively this second half of the season. Today, he did go 0 for 2 against the Pirates, but he did drive in the game-tying RBI in the seventh with the bases loaded sac fly. And it kind of felt like, oh, like, when when you're in that situation, you're watching the game, it's like, okay, this is the guy that might get something done. And he did. It only turned into a one RBI, one run scored, tied the game. but he got something done. He managed to tie the game with a sacrifice fly, and it kind of felt like the guy you wanted to have up at that point because no one you didn't trust or have a lot of confidence in the rest of the lineup. And that is a stark contrast to what we kind of experienced with Matt Shaw basically the entire first half of the season. Besides, obviously, the month or so that he had got sent back down to AAA, um, that was Matt Shaw. If you were like Matt Shaw was not the guy you wanted coming up with bases loaded, nobody out situations in the first half of the season, and he has completely flipped the script since the All Star break. So these are his stats post All Star break entering Friday. Remember that entering Friday with 72 plate appearances. So he has a two in the again post All Star break entering Friday. 212 WRC plus, an 1141 OPS, a 324 batting average. His walk rates dropped slightly to 5.6% walk rate, but he's still only at a 19.1% strikeout rate. He's hit 8 home runs, 16 RBIs, and I think that 779 slugging number in the second half post All Star break is a number that truly jumps out to me, and you'll see why in a second. Before the All Star break, 232 plate appearances. He had a 60 WRC plus, a 556 OPS, a 198 batting average, a 9.1% walk rate, 19.4% strikeout rate. So actually, he was doing a pretty good job with those two. He had only hit 2 home runs and 15 RBI, so he has now more than doubled his RBI total and more than, or I think his whatever 2 times, whatever he has hit 4 times as many home runs in the second half and 72 plate appearances as he did in the first half and 232 plate appearances. And then I mentioned the 779 slugging percentage because he was only slugging 280 before the All-Star break. Just an insane turnaround and an extended turnaround here for Matt Shaw. Like you're closing in on 100 plate appearances of a sample, which is still small when it comes to like a full season sample size, but it's a pretty good indicator of like what a guy is capable of doing or what a guy is doing. And it's a smaller sample size, but it's big enough that you can like look at those numbers and feel like, yeah, like that's happening. It's not a fluke right now. So he's doing a really good job since the All-Star break. Now on the season, and this is including his numbers for his day at the plate today. Now on the season, he's got a 94 WRC plus, a 694 OPS. So he's closing in on getting that over 700 and getting the 94, not getting his WRC plus, closing in on league average there. He's only hitting 227, but obviously that's a big improvement from hitting below 200 before the All-Star break. He's got 10 home runs and 32 RBIs. And trying to kind of figure out what is working for Matt Shaw at the plate. I don't know, like mechanics wise, adjustments wise, like how, like I haven't been able to talk to him post All-Star break, so I don't know what he worked on at the All-Star break, if there's anything specifically that he's changed and whatnot. But you can see it in the numbers. So the biggest difference is these are some of the biggest differences I see. This is before the All-Star break versus after the All-Star break. And again, those post All-Star break numbers are entering today. Yeah. As far as ground ball rate go, 44.2% ground ball rate before the All-Star break, down to a 37.7% after the All-Star break. Pull rate, 31.7% pull rate, up to a 55.6% pull rate. So he's hitting the ball on the ground less, he's pulling it more. He had 26.8% hard hit rate before the All-Star break. He's now post All-Star break. He's at a 35.3% hard hit rate. So let me get the rest of these in. He was at a 4.3% barrel rate before the All-Star break, up to 13% after the All-Star break. He had an 83.3 mile per hour average exit velocity before the break, 88.9 miles per hour now after the break. So he's hitting the ball on the ground less. He's pulling the ball a lot more. He's hitting the ball harder a lot more. He's getting the barrel to the ball a lot harder. And another number of miles per hour, average exit velocity, 5 miles per hour, over 5 miles per hour higher, which I don't know. Maybe to some people it doesn't sound like a lot. It is a lot. It's a pretty big jump when you're talking about average exit velocity. So That combined with the hard hit rate, the barrel rate, the pull rate, the lower ground ball rate, things have gone in a lot better direction for Matt Shaw since the All Star break. You see it in those numbers, and you see it when you're watching him play, when you're watching him hit. And I know the Eugenio Suarez stuff. I mean, I kind of pushed the Eugenio Suarez stuff a little bit before the trade deadline, and I still think he's would have been a great hitter to add to this lineup without context. But third base was the hole in the lineup leading into the trade deadline, or like the one that you felt like this one really needs to get fixed. It was third base, and that's why Suarez was such a big name for the Cubs. But now, and this is the 2 weeks before the All Star, or after the between the All Star break and the trade deadline, those 2 weeks, and now 2 weeks into August, Shaw's kind of proving that like no, they actually didn't need to go out and get Eugenio Suarez because Matt Shaw is a really good hitter. He's been a really good hitter so far since the All Star break ended, and that's a huge positive to see because at least there's one guy who is doing a really good job hitting when the rest of the lineup, for the most part. I mean, again, I mentioned like Nico Horner has had a good second half, and even Ian Happ has as well. But when your biggest hitters are all struggling at the same time for an extended period of time, at least you got this guy, this rookie, figuring it out at a high level and doing it at a high level for you. Like that's huge to see, especially when you're thinking about beyond 2025. I don't want to say think beyond 2025 yet because the Cubs need to make the postseason this year, but the front office thinks in the Jed Hoyer's kind of mantra of uh, keeping one eye. I go something like keeping one eye on this season and one eye on the future. Right, like they're always thinking about the future, despite trying to make the playoffs this year. Matt Shaw's a huge piece of the future. He might help the Cubs make the playoffs this season, but he's also proving that he is still a huge piece for this Cubs team in the future. So credit to Matt Shaw for figuring things out and getting himself back on track and doing a really good job post All-Star break. The Cubs, every little bit they can get from their offense, they've needed it, and Matt Shaw's provided a lot. I do want to end this with a quick acknowledgement of Miguel Amaya, who's back on the injured list with a left ankle sprain. His first game back, remember he had that left oblique strain. Was it left oblique strain? Yeah. Earlier this year, I want to say that was towards the end of May. Had been on the injured list ever since, so almost 3 months, or maybe, I don't remember exactly when in May it was, but 2.5, 3 months on the shelf. Comes back, doesn't play the first game that he gets activated for, but then plays the next day. So that was on Wednesday. So his actual first game back playing since going on the injured list. And to first of all, like going on the injured list when he did suck because he was having a really good season. Defensively, doing a good job calling games, working with the pitchers, that stuff. But then offensively, was doing a really good job. And then he goes on the injured list, spends all that time on the injured list, comes back and beating out an infield single, doing a great job hustling down the line and beating out an infield single, rolls his ankle. Or it looked a lot worse at the time when it happened, but apparently rolls the ankle. Uh, I believe the report out of Toronto afterwards was that the X-rays were negative. There's not a timeline for return for him this season if he even can. And that again, I mentioned it's a left ankle sprain. It looked like it could have been a knee thing, uh, but we're not doctors, so thankfully they got it looked at. And for now, it's a left ankle sprain. Um, we don't know if he's going to be able to play for the Cubs yet. That's TBD. We don't know if he's going to be able to play for the Cubs again this season, or even if they make the postseason, could he return at that point? We don't know. All we know is he's back on the IL, and it sucks for a guy. You feel bad for him because of all the injuries he's had in his career. He had Tommy John a few years ago, a Lisfranc Frank fracture in his foot a few years ago. Don't remember exactly what year that was. Again, I mentioned the left oblique strain earlier this year, and then now he's dealing with this. He's missed a lot of games over the last few years. He only played 23 games in the minors in 2021, 40 in 2022. He played 81 games in 2023 between the minors and the majors. He did stay healthy and played 117 games for the Cubs last year, but now he is only at 28 games and potentially will stay at 28 games if it's determined he can't play for the Cubs again this season. So we'll see. We'll kind of keep an eye on that for updates on what the Cubs give us when it comes to Amaya and if he gets to play again this season. But certainly feel bad for the guy who works. I mean, if you've talked to Miguel Amaya, you've watched him work, like hard worker, great dude, loves the game, loves to play, wants to help this team so badly, and just hasn't been able to stay healthy this season and provide a big boost to this team. Again, I mentioned he was having a pretty good season overall before the oblique injury. Then that happens, and you already feel bad for the guy. But then he goes through the grind of rehabbing and recovering and getting back on the field, and is only able to play in one game before he's back on the injured list. So, I guess for Amaya, from a humanity standpoint, like hope for a speedy recovery. It would be great to see him back on the field and see if he can help the Cubs get into the postseason and maybe make some noise if that happens. But we'll see. It's to be determined on a timeline for return, and we'll kind of just keep an eye on any updates we get on Miguel Amaya and see if he's able to return to the Cubs this season. So to close this out real quickly, up next, the Cubs have two more against the Pirates at Wrigley this weekend. Saturday, it is Shota Imanaga versus Mike Burrows. And Sunday, it is Javier Assad versus TBD for the Pirates. Then you got 5 and 4 days against the Brewers next week. 5 and 4 days at Wrigley against the Brewers. A few weeks ago, felt like a massive, massive series. It's kind of feeling less so as the days go, as the deficit in the division widens, right? The hype around the series starts to feel a little diminished with the way the Brewers just keep going up and the Cubs are going down. So it could still prove to be a pretty big series. The division is going to be tough at this point with the Cubs with 8. Was that what I say? 8.5, maybe even 9 back by the end of today. It's going to be tough to come back and make that a division race again. Obviously, a 5-game series against the division leaders that could help close the gap, especially if you do really well. If you somehow take 4 out of 5 in that series, like you've cut 3 games off that lead. But the division, on the flip side, the division could also basically be sealed if things go poorly in that series for the Cubs. So, got to get through these 2 days against the Pirates for sure, but still at this point, a pretty big series against the Brewers coming up next week. So I'll definitely have more coming on the Addison to 35th podcast after that Brewers series, resetting where the Cubs are at in the division, in the wild card, how they're looking. Did they improve over the week? So we'll see what happens after the Brewers come to town and play that 5-game set at Wrigley Field. That should be regardless, it's going to be an interesting series because you are watching the hottest team in baseball in the Brewers playing against a Cubs team trying to get things back on track. It's going to be interesting. I'll have my eyes on it, and I'll be back with you next week for another Addison the 35th podcast. But until then, have a good one.